everybody. I'm Dr. Duke, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. Vicki, how are you today? I've got Vicki McKenna with me.
Well, it ebbs and flows. I don't know if it's going to ebb or flow today, Duke.
This is better than Christmas for me, getting to talk to you this way. And we get to talk a little bit more in depth than we usually do on your very popular radio program. So we have a story today about a very horrible story about a New York teacher who is accused of actually manipulating a fifth grade girl into changing her gender without parents' knowledge or consent and causing suicidal ideation in this child, literally bullying a young girl into believing and then committing to being transgender.
Right. You have all of these folks, number one, saying, oh, no, this is not indoctrination. It's not propaganda. It's not grooming. This is just tolerance. And we're just sharing different types of people so that children will grow up to be tolerant of all of the different types of people in society. I mean, that was the way they sold this BS to parents. In fact, if they even bothered to sell it to parents, because most of this just was implemented. It was a top-down decision. And we all warned that it was going to become a process of indoctrination. And we've actually already seen that pay dividends, particularly for the alphabet mafia, particularly with girls. Abigail Schreier has an amazing book called Irreversible Damage, where she chronicles all of the girls, a 3,000% increase in girls identifying as transgender. That is because people are deliberately exposing them and encouraging them. And now think about this, a 9-year-old girl, she's just a girl, and her teacher decides that girl is going to be her test project. I'm going to see if I can make that girl feel like a boy. And in fairly short order, that girl who is constantly being referred to as a boy by this teacher, imagine what that made her peers think, began to develop suicidal thoughts. She was 9 years old, thinking about killing herself. And this teacher thought there was nothing wrong with this. And in fact, when the parents finally found out, which was months later, this teacher was still allowed to be exposed to her child. Months later, finally, the parents are told, and the teacher is still permitted to teach, young children, fifth grade children. Furthermore, this story actually details how this teacher told the rest of the class, try to be gay. You're 9 years old, but I want you to try to be gay. And this is not something that is a one-off. These are the kinds of stories that we are starting to hear routinely now.
Yeah, there's the picture. Put that up again, Mike. This is the teacher, Deborah Rosenquist, who works at the Terryville Road Elementary School in the Brookhaven, Comsowego School District, and was named along with the superintendent, Jennifer Quinn, and the principal in a suit that was filed in January. The suit claims that the student, who was assigned female at birth and identifies as female, was targeted by her teacher, Rosenquist, throughout the 2022 school year. Rosenquist began to use a male name and pronouns for the student without necessarily consenting. And the suit says the plaintiff, student, and parents' anonymity were maintained by the law school. Now, here's the thing. You brought up something really important. So all this talk about kids who are not allowed to be gay and trans killing themselves, what we are in reality seeing, kids being pushed towards suicide by having this gender nonsense pushed on them in elementary and middle. This is elementary school.
Yeah, and this is incredibly young ages. Now, the rest of the kids try to be gay. Now, try to be gay. So now I guess we're trying to do an experiment to see how many other kids can develop suicidal ideation and see how many people we can convert into the sexual politics of the alphabet cult. That is what is going on here, and the parents are not being told. In Wisconsin, parents are not being told, even after successful lawsuits being brought by groups like the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. In the case of the Madison School District in Wisconsin, they just circumvented the rule of the court. And they're still not telling parents that they are actively transing kids in the classroom. I just saw last night a teacher who was fired because she refused to keep information away from parents. She refused to hide the transing of a child from a parent. She was fired because her Christian beliefs apparently clashed with the secular beliefs and the political beliefs of the school system. So of course she's suing, but she's going to have to crawl through court before she's ultimately found to have had her civil rights violated. This is all over the place. It's like we're being shelled. It's like the bombardments are coming from all sides in all directions, from top, from bottom. Everywhere you step, something's blowing up. And all these lawsuits, as successful as they typically are, have not resulted in any kind of sense of warning to school districts to stop. By the way, put up that picture of that teacher again. The blue hair, that's a tell. If that's something you see in your child's classroom, get your kid out of that school ASAP.
Yeah, and I love the idea, Vicki, that you use the military imagery, right? Bombardment, shelling. Because what we're giving these kids that's driving them, I think, to suicide is post-traumatic stress disorder. I mean, tell me if you're a developing 8-year-old, 9-year-old, and you're being bullied by your teacher to change your gender, and you're quietly and silently in your fear resisting that inside of you, and yet you are being pounded into submission metaphorically. Yes. I mean, how does this not lead to battle fatigue? This is, again,
that's a good point.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. Clearly, this is what's happening. And
the kids are internalizing it because
yes.
They're not going to fight the authority figure of a grown-up. They're 9. They're being taught by everybody on the planet to respect authority. And so you're right. They're going to fight that battle inside themselves, and it will manifest in bizarre and dangerous, psychologically dangerous and potentially deadly ways. This teacher doesn't care. This is a cause for her. Your children are a cause for these people. And you have to realize that going in, and it does not matter if you are in small town, Podunk, Iowa, or the outer edges of rural Wisconsin. It's everywhere. It is everywhere. It is coming in our state from the DPI. It is coming from all sides from Department of Education and the teachers union, of course.
Yeah, and the superintendent and the principal were included in the lawsuit because the entire structure of the school supports this. Even if they didn't know, they're condoning this. They're telling their teachers, you must accede to these kids. You have to teach them about gender options. Listen to this. Rosenquist, the teacher, pursued her own agenda, however, outside the curriculum, which included persuading her 5th grade students to try to be gay or being another gender, even if they were not. To further her agenda, she read and provided her students graphic books about gender and sexuality, which were not in the curriculum. The district admitted in a meeting with the parents, the district admitted that they had no idea Rosenquist taught from a book about LGBTQ plus individuals that was not part of the curriculum, and how detailed the book was about transitioning, surgery, and hormones. Mike, take a look at the picture you got there. There it is. When Aiden became a brother, and notice, not a white person to be found. Notice, right, that this checks off your CRT requirements, your social emotional learning boxes ticked, and your LGBTQ. Look at her rainbow shirt. And there's your triangle, right? Notice I've said this to you many times. It's a Stonewall Book Award. So when libraries are picking books, they're telling the people who are on the library commission, hey, we got to choose this book because it's an award winner. Right. And look where the award's coming from. A LGBTQ activist group, Stonewall. We know what that is. Stonewall Book Award.
Yeah, well, and you're right. And so we didn't know she was teaching this. They didn't care she was teaching this. When they found out, they did not remove her from the classroom. They did not immediately contact the parents. They went into CYA mode, but they did not penalize, punish, discipline, admonish, even talk to this teacher, at least from the appearances of this lawsuit. So we didn't know, just ignore us. We're only the ones who are supposed to be monitoring the classroom. This plausible deniability that administrators have. This is going on in Sheboygan, Wisconsin right now, where the superintendent, I didn't know the library was carrying pornographic comic books and letting kids check them out and putting them in featured sections of the library. I had no idea. And this is the way it always goes. Oftentimes you will see this dodge. Very rarely will you see what you see in like Madison, Wisconsin, where the full administration has gotten behind this idea that children should be lab rats in sexuality experimentation. And it's your kids. You don't get to make that call. These are your kids. As an Eau Claire teacher once put on her door, I'm your mom now.
Oh, yeah. And, think about this for a second. The parents, too, share responsibility. These parents were, according to the story, these parents were supportive and supported their child discovering her gender identity. But they did not believe their daughter expressed a desire to change her gender. So, you got nobody to blame. If when you send your kids to 5th grade elementary school, you're open to the school allowing your child to expand her gender opportunities, then why are you the least bit surprised that they're not going to bully? And I want to say this too. Think about this. There is no reward for a teacher who teaches kids to read at a higher level. Kids, if you're a math teacher in middle school and you get your kids at the highest level of math achievement, there are no rewards for you. There are only rewards in this new system if you are sociologically changing them. In fact, if you make your kids read and do math better than other kids, then you are harming them, not including them. The only way you get notches on your belt, you get pats on the head, you get moved forward for raises, is if you transform the kid politically and socially, not if you educate them.
And in case anybody would think you're wrong about that, one need only look up the proficiency scores in reading and mathematics. Barely 40% of children are proficient in reading or mathematics, and in some low-performing school districts, barely 10% are. But no teachers get fired, no teachers get moved, no teachers get retrained. It is okay to have an education system that in the aggregate costs trillions of dollars to fund, and have fewer than half of all children actually able to do math and reading at grade level. And as I always must point out, math and reading at grade level in 2023 is not what math and reading at grade level was when you were in school. The standards have been lowered, and we still can't get to 50%. And it's okay. It's okay. How many students do you have who are non-binary? How many students do you have who have identified as pansexual? How many students do you have who are trans, who are LGBT, WTF? How many students are Black? How many students are Hispanic? How many students are poor? That's the only thing that matters. That's the only metric any longer that matters. And so, I don't even know why any parent hasn't moved heaven and earth to remove their children from this system. I do not think this system can be saved. And just protect your kids. Get them the hell out of this.
There's this, I want to close with this quote from the legal complaint, and then we'll transition to I used that word wrongly, transition into the second story. But it comes from the complaint. The 5th grade girl became so distressed by Rosenquist's referring to her as a male that she drew a picture of a girl in her book and referenced suicide, the lawsuit said. In January 22, the parents were informed that their daughter drew a picture of a girl with the words, "I want to kill myself, and I feel sad a lot."
Oh, that makes me want to slap those parents. That makes me want to do. And I would like to see the blue-haired teacher who has done so much damage in jail.
Still to come, a drag queen forces a child to leave class for denying that there are 73 genders. School teachers anal and oral sex to 11-year-olds, and they show them how to make a skin graft from an arm to create An artificial penis, 11-year-olds. That's what we're talking about right now. From the horrible to the absurd, Vicky, we have a UK school. This is on the Isle of Man. A UK school, government school, has suspended a sex education program temporarily after a drag queen was allowed into the school to teach high school kids about the 73 genders. A drag queen, not a teacher, a drag queen. And when a young boy stood up and said there are only two genders, after most of the class, by the way, the drag queen asked the class how many genders are, and the majority of the kids said two. She said, the drag queen, he said, no, that's not true. There are 73. And one boy, who then was not afraid like the other ones, he simply said, no, there's two. The drag queen, not a teacher, not an employee of the school, simply said, you are banished from the classroom. You have upset me, and out you go. We are now canceling young high school kids for not agreeing with drag queens in public schools.
Middle school kids. He's 11. Not even high school. We're going to cancel that 11-year-old kid. You know, I think when America finally ends, it's going to look a lot like a really dumb comedy sketch. At this point, this is just stupid. It's just stupid. A bad comedy sketch, or maybe a bad comedy horror film involving clowns, because everybody around you seems to be painted in such a way that they look like psycho clowns, including this drag queen that we're talking about. She kicks the 11-year-old kid out. There's only two genders. You're gone. Good for him. He was the lucky one. He didn't have to look at a psycho man in a dress wearing clown makeup and fake boobs. So that little 11-year-old boy, he got the good end of the bargain by being thrown out of that class. But think about it. That class was showing depictions of how to have anal sex, how to have oral sex, how to perform a skin graft to create a penis for a girl. Now, I know this is the UK and they're a few years ahead of us, but not by much. Coming soon to your kids' class.
It's already in classrooms. We saw what happened in the previous segment we talked about earlier about how a 11-year-old girl, and something about the age 11, right, who was bullied, she was 9 years old, was bullied into becoming a male when she didn't want to be, and almost killed herself for this. And so we have a really great video. Listen to this, and if you don't believe what we're telling you, listen to this horror show.
Gender ideologies have also been included in the classroom discussions, and in one school this was led by a drag queen.
They were divided into three groups. The first group I'll start with had a drag queen come in, and the drag queen asked the question, how many genders are there? The children responded dutifully, there's two. The drag queen said, no, there isn't two, there's over 70, there's 73. One 11-year-old child got very upset by that and turned around and said, no, there's not, there's only two. The drag queen unfortunately then responded with, you have upset me, get out, and threw this child out of the class. The next group was then taught about sex change operations. They were shown artificial penises, and they were then shown a skin graft taken from a girl's arm to use to put onto the artificial penis. The third group, they were taught oral and anal sex, and a lot of the children are just too traumatised to even talk to their parents, and even when other friends have phoned up saying, they just go, I can't talk about it, just not talking about it.
So these are 11-year-old kids?
These are 11-year-old children.
Year 7.
Year 7.
Trauma, that is the word, Vicky. We've already talked about this. Trauma.
That's a crime.
Yep.
You just heard someone describe sexual abuse of a child.
Yep, and trauma. The kids are traumatized. We mentioned post-traumatic stress disorder. You're giving these kids a lifetime of horrific mental illnesses because you are forcing concepts and issues on them way before they have any ability to process them.
It's like, go back to what these people look like. They look like psycho clown demons. Not only are you giving them the precursors for trauma, then you're cementing it by making a very, very scary looking person be the one to deliver the message and sexually abuse them. This is sexual abuse. That is what is going on here. If I were babysitting somebody's children and I were showing them pictures of skin graft penises, showing them how to oral and anal sex, and having conversations about gender and all kinds of other sexual conversations, they would arrest me. I would be arrested. I would be accused of enticing a minor, which is a crime. I think it is a crime in every single state. And yet no one talks about it like this. And if you say something or I say something, transphobic bigot, if somebody calls me a transphobic bigot, I am going to take that as a badge of honor. Nobody can just rest. It is, if it's not your kids today, it will be your kids tomorrow. It probably already is your kids today. And I just still cannot fathom why American parents haven't stood up for their children against this abuse. Criminal abuse.
I have a theory, and that theory is the same thing that allows little kids to get bullied into this. It's the idea that if you don't agree with these progressive trends, if you don't believe that your job is to nurture your child's every delusion, now you're going to be called a bad parent. You're going to be told that in the schools and in the hallways, the PTA meetings, that you're not with it, you're not hip, you're retrograde, heaven forbid, you're a conservative. We have so poisoned language. We have so created a culture here of shame and humiliation if you do not kowtow to the latest progressive trends.
Yeah, you're right.
So this is what's happening. Parents are more concerned about how they'll be viewed in the community than how they are raising their kids.
Yeah, the sticks and stones, mom and dad. But you're right. We can't get anyone to shame people who break the law, burn and loot cities, attack police officers, rape and murder. We can't get anyone to actually think that society should be throwing down shame. But you're a parent. You're just a tax-paying parent with a child in the public schools. We're going to shame you if you don't allow us to abuse your kid. And think about this. You're letting them do it. You're letting them do it. You are afraid of somebody saying something mean about you on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. So what? You're not willing to put up with a little bit of name calling for your kid? You're not somebody who is qualified and prepared to be a parent. Because to be a parent is to be willing to lay down your life. Certainly, you should be willing to lay down a little bit of name calling for your child.
I'd go further than that, Vicki. Not only are they doing exactly what you just said, but they then are siding with the bullies who are terrorizing their children.
Yeah.
They're not just quiet. They're not just failing to be parents. They are throwing with their silence, with their consent to gender exploration in these schools, they are throwing their maternal and paternal power behind the schools that are bullying. It's as if they're holding their children down on the playground and allowing the bully to punch their children in the face.
Good point. Now, hang on, son. I'm going to hold you here a little more until you're good and beaten. Yeah, I think that is maybe a little bit hyperbolic, but not entirely unapt as a metaphor. I really never thought this would happen. I thought parents would stand up. My dad would have gone to prison to protect me and my brother. I know parents like this. I don't know how they're not the majority. I'm gobsmacked by that. People won't take their kids out of these schools. Well, we can't afford it. Well, there's some homeschool options that are pretty low cost. And do you really need the Harley? Do you really need the ATV? Do you really need the second car? Do you really need your creature comforts from China, bought and paid for on Amazon at the expense of your children's well-being? Do you really need that stuff? And that is something that I guess those are questions parents don't want to ask themselves. They don't want to do without those creature comforts, even if it means their children being miserable. I'm not saying all parents, oh, you good ones out there, we love you and we're happy that you're out there fighting. We just wish there were more.
My final comment we'll end this segment is all of this stuff is being hidden under health and human growth initiatives.
Yeah.
That's ultimately, well, we had no choice. This is what the state, this is what the federal government, this is what the culture minister in England have required for us. So that's why we're bringing all this in. And so again, we can blame a vague curriculum that nobody had a vote on, and no individual pays any price. And that is going to wrap up this show. If you have any questions, comments, or you want to support the show, a very good one, I think, today, simply visit drdukeshow.com. For all of us at the Dr. Duke Show and for Vicki McKenna, thank you, and we can't wait to see you next time.